Welcome to the Embodying Excellence Podcast. I'm your host, Carlo, and I'm here with Brendan. How are you, Brendan?
Yeah, good yourself?
Good, thank you. You had a big week this week?
Yeah, big week.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I've got a few changes that I'm making at the moment, and so it's just been one of those weeks where I'm going, all right, how do I transition into these new changes without being distracted by the things that I would normally do, whether they were destructive habits or just like building a new life essentially. And so it was certainly a big week for me. What are we talking about today?
Leading by example.
That's a huge topic, eh?
Yeah.
Like it's one of those topics where you go, oofed. Like for me personally, because you can talk about leading by example, but actually doing the leading is one of those challenging things that it encompasses all areas of your life. Where if you're going to the toilet the same way that you're leading a business or a company, then you can say that you're leading by example. Like I know that's a pretty extreme example, but at the same time, like an extreme contrast, but at the same time, how you do things is how you'll do other things. Like you'll be likely to do other things, which is why it's such a big topic for me, because it's one of those things that I can yarn on about all fucking day.
Yeah. Oh, we don't have all day, but let's talk about that.
That's true. That's true. Come on, Carl, let's figure out how you can condense it into 45 minutes. Come on. Come on.
But yeah, leading, it just goes into all aspects, like you said, whether it's in your work life, your home life, the gym, everything. It's just something that I like to sort of, it makes me want to push harder, to be honest, leading by example, because I feel as though if I'm sort of pushing as hard as I can, people are more likely to follow my lead.
Yeah.
And then as a result, everyone gets better.
Well, people are hungry for leaders, because the thing is, leadership is one of those qualities that a lot of people that I've found in my experience, they talk themselves out of it, like, that's not me, or like, who am I to tell all these people what to do, or show all these people what to do. And sometimes it's not all about telling people what to do or showing people what to do. It's often about telling yourself what to do and showing yourself the right things to do that will allow for you to develop into the character that you want to be in your life. And so I was recently listening to a podcast actually between Jordan Peterson and Tony Robbins, and I think this is the most articulate way of describing character development I've ever heard in my life. And it was Dr. Peterson that said that character development is the development of procedural habits that shape perception itself, and not just propositional knowledge. I heard that, I was like, wow, like that's the most accurate description. And that's essentially what leading by example is. It's developing the habits that you need in order to go and live the life that you want, and doing them, and not just going, oh well, I know that I need to do this, but you know what, I don't want to do it because like it's uncomfortable, or I want to stay where I am, or I feel as though that if I go do it, then people will laugh at me, or they'll ridicule me, or they'll look at me, and do all these things that pop up in your brain that get in your own way. Leading by example just means that you figure out what the example is that you want to set, and you go and do the thing. And whether that will be going to the gym 3 times a week, 4 times a week, and your family members are all sort of going, oh, why do you go to the gym? Like, it's really not necessary. Like, you look healthy, you look good, or you know what, you can just go to work and you do as much exercise as you would going to the gym. Like, what do you need the gym for? Or it might be eating well, and then someone else might just go, oh, well, you know what, you're going to die anyway, so why don't you just enjoy eating garbage? Like, it just tastes better, and it's easier to buy, and you don't have to prepare it, and it's like, well, that's not the life that I want to lead. And that's not the life that I decide that I want to follow. And so people will say shit, and different things happen in life, but at the same time, if you use the example that you want to set as the benchmark metric, you have a guide, you have principles, there's value in following that vision for yourself and that example for yourself, and you work towards it. And so by doing that, you develop the character. And leading by example is the easiest way to do that. And unfortunately, it's also practically one of the most challenging, because like I said, just the way that I described it now, it sounds so easy, but in reality, it's often not.
Yeah, it's a lot of times things seem so simple, and they're often the most difficult things, the most simplistic things.
Well, it's a funny inverse relationship like that, isn't it? Like there are so many different parallels when it comes to our life experience, where, for example, I was working as a retailer at Dan Murphy's, and I was this ambitious person who just liked to do everything and make sure the store looks the best, that the staff are doing all their jobs, and making sure that the customers were being looked after. It was more of a pride thing, because I wanted to be a manager. Like I wanted to say to people, hey, I'm the manager, like look at me. And so the thing was, like, as much as now I look back in retrospect, like that wasn't I wouldn't say it's the incorrect motive, but I would also say that it probably wasn't the motive to use. But back then, that's what drove me. It was ego. It was like, well, I need to be at the top, and the way that I'm going to get to the top is two ways. One, I can cheat other people, or I can be the absolute best there is. And I decided to be the absolute best there was. And so it did piss people off, because people were there longer than I was, but I became a manager before they did. And it was because while they slacked off, I worked. Yeah. And so learning that approach, it allowed me to get to that position that I wanted to get at that role. And at the same time, that takes a lot of energy as well as courage. And so when you're at that point, you need to be able to discern what it is, what the standard that you're setting is, versus what are you actually doing it for. Where now, I look at the way that I do things now, a lot of factors would come in between the time that I was 18, 19, 20 years old to now, where I'm turning 28. It's going and using that same approach, using that same drive, using that same relentlessness, but for a different purpose. So now it's more, what can I give in order to later receive? And not me expecting to receive, but I know by leading by example, I can give people inspiration, like you said, to follow in your footsteps. I can give people tools and resources in order for them to improve their lives, like this podcast does. And at the same time, leading by example, I can also then give them the courage to take the steps that they need to take in order to live the lives that they want. And so leading by example isn't just the best way to go about pursuing goals or pursuing relationships or pursuing anything in general. It's the only way. And so if you don't know how to lead by example, find somebody that does, so that then you have something to follow. You have an anchor and a light post where you can see, hey, this is the standard, and the way that they do things doesn't have to be the way that I do things, but it inspires me to make a difference and to do something different, which is why having mentors and having people that lead you by example is so important, so that you can do exactly the same.
Yeah, guys, you mentioned the standards thing, and if you're a manager, for example, like you said, if you're picking up after things, getting things organising.
Well, just to say that you're a manager as well, right?
Yeah.
Like you have a role that you work in, that you're currently a manager as well. So I just wanted to let people know, so that then you're talking from experience.
Yeah, and I'm in a management sort of role at work.
Yeah.
So if I see something to be done, I just go and do it. If I need a hand, I need a hand. If you're putting in the work, you're setting the standard for everyone to follow. And that's to me what leading by example is. It's you're expecting other people to abide by that standard as well. And as a result, the company's getting better, the people are getting better because they're getting to that standard. And if they're putting in that work at work, that's going to transfer to their general everyday life.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of the time you're spending in your life is at work. So if the culture's not good at your workplace, that filters through to your everyday life. Yeah.
And it's the trusting too. Like, I know, for example, that if I were to work for somebody that sets the standard and sets the benchmark, I would trust them. Where if I worked for somebody that only just delegated tasks and didn't put the effort in as they were expected or as that role would need them to because they had that responsibility, I wouldn't trust them as much. I wouldn't invest as much trust in somebody that didn't do the work to then give me counsel or give me any sort of advice or tasks to do than the person that does. And so, like you said, a person that sets the standard, it then trickles down into the people that work for you, for example.
Yeah.
If you set the standard and you set the benchmark, then people not only will follow your lead, but they'll be more inclined to trust you. They'll be more inclined to ask you questions. They'll be more inclined to ask you for advice, to ask you to deal with a situation because they're unsure, but they know because you set the standard and you build them up, of course they're going to ask you. Where if you were that person that had the title of manager, but the only way that you managed was you delegated tasks for other people to do while you did nothing, then they'll resent you for that. And then later they won't ask you to deliver on something, or they won't ask you questions about things that they're unsure of. They probably wouldn't even be inclined to talk to you or open up to you because you would either shut them down, judge them, or do something that doesn't inspire them to work harder. Where by leading by example and doing the work that you do, of course people are going to go, shit, Brendan fucking works his ass off. Like, he's someone that I would trust if I needed help. He's someone that I would trust if I couldn't do something and he could, and I can say, hey Brendan, I need help. And then you go, oh, okay, what do you need? And then X, Y, Z. Oh, okay, cool, all right, so here, let me help you. And then you would help them, but you wouldn't just do it yourself. You would go, hey, like, I'm helping you do this at the moment, but here's what to know so that then you're able to do it and apply yourself next time. Yeah. And then if you have any questions, then you know what, you know where to find me, or hey, don't be afraid to come and ask.
Yeah.
And so when someone like yourself does lead by example in the workplace, then the people will feel that you can be trusted. And that's huge, because that doesn't just apply in the workplace, that also applies in life, where if you're friends with someone and they don't follow the example that they say that they set, I mean, how inclined are you going to be to trust them, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, how inclined are you to feel that they're going to follow through if you were to ask them of something? Or how inclined would you feel to go to their events or just hang out with them? Like, you likely wouldn't, right? And so, I mean, you've got to do something, right? Because building and doing nothing, like, they're two different things. And so a person that leads by example is constantly building, is constantly creating, is constantly networking, is constantly teaching. Like, they have responsibilities, where people that don't lead by example, they abstain from any responsibility. They abstain from any opportunity to develop or to grow and to do more. Those people that don't lead by example, you're not inclined to associate with them, where people that you are inclined to associate with more is likely the people that take more responsibility, and potentially not in the way that you describe. Like, someone just might be a really chill person, really happy. They're one of those people that just go with the flow of life, but at the same time, they're okay with where they are. Like, they might not be like cream of the crop, but they're happy with themselves. A person that is happy with themselves is also another person that leads by example. And you can see that because they go, well, hey, you know what? Maybe my place in the world isn't the cream of the crop. Maybe it's that middle worker who wants to take care of his family and wants to provide a better life for his family. You can see that they're doing that. But then when things do go wrong, they're also taking responsibility and making necessary changes in order for them to continue living this life that they want to live. And so there's a lot of moving parts when it comes to leading by example. But when you are leading by example, the trust is huge. When you aren't, then it's not there at all, and then that affects a lot of the relationship, that affects a lot of the way that you do things, and it doesn't lead to results either. And so we're in this podcast because we want a result from this podcast. We want to be able to grow in a way where people are watching us have discussions about things that are important, so that then the people that are watching, their lives can change. And so we set an example of coming each time and having a lengthy discussion about things that matter and about embodying excellence, and give practical tools on how people can then apply this into their lives. If we weren't doing that and we were just showing up and just being blasé about this whole thing, then why start it in the first place? And so understanding that by leading by example, you always get results, because it doesn't matter which way you do it, but at the same time, when you set the standard, you set the bar, and the results are inevitable.
You can't, to me as well, if you're not leading by example, you can't sort of expect people to do things as well.
No.
So as a role, like if I, for example, at work, if I left shit all over the place, if I didn't finish off a job, if I didn't answer the question of a customer, if I didn't treat the customer with respect, I can't expect the people that work around me to do the same, because I'm not doing that myself. Same thing as like rubbish. If I throw rubbish in a bin, I miss a bin and I'll just leave it there. I can't expect people to have the decency to pick up and put their own rubbish in the bin if they miss.
Absolutely not. And like another great example is why I wore this jersey today. Like if you look at a sports team, like I know everyone can relate to sports teams because we have a huge sport culture here in Australia. Penrith have won the last 4 premierships. Right? And it wasn't by luck, it was by design. And their team at the moment, the way it's managed, the way they do their juniors, to even the cleaning stuff and the facilities and everything, like it's second to none. And the standards that they set for their business, for the club, for the way that the players play, fans can go, hey, I support this team not because they play incredibly well every week, but I support this team because they're about community. They're about getting together and getting everyone involved. And that's leading by example too, because if you want a team that you know that you can follow, because not only do they play well, but at the same time, outside of the field, they do everything in their power to keep their fans together and supporting the team, then that's what will build the team to become better, which is why we're all excited for the season to come up, because we've just been watching this great dynasty of a team play every single week, but also set the standard every week. Like now, we watch games, like we've been very fortunate over the last couple of years, we'll watch games, we might be losing 12, 16-0, right? But in our minds, we're just going, well, we'll just end up winning the game. Because we know that the side that we watch play have a standard that they follow, and as soon as they follow that standard, that seesaw of, we started off the game really poorly, to, hey, we ended the game really well, but we need to work on our first 20 minutes so that then that doesn't happen again. And that's just another example of leading by example. Now you look at other sides, now they're sort of going, well, we need to start doing what Penrith are doing.
Yeah.
Because their whole system is so well done, and every other one isn't so well done, and they're wondering why they're losing, and no one's surprised that Penrith's winning. And so like something's being done really well, and it's just another case of setting the example and setting the standard and following it. Like they're congruent, like there's integrity within the team. And then that's another really enjoyable aspect of watching this particular team, is because we want to win, they're setting the things that needs to be done to win, and then they're following through.
Yeah.
And so like there isn't anything more enjoyable than watching someone that says they're going to do something, creates a plan to go out and do it, and then does it. And then does it. And that's what leading by example is.
You take that footy example, qualifying final, Penrith versus Roosters at Penrith Park. Cleary kicked from inside his half, and the ball got charged down. He was the first one to run back and stop an inevitable try from occurring, and then the rest of he was leading by example in that scenario, and then the rest of his team followed and stopped a whole centre six within their own 10-metre line. That's another example of leading by example. If one person goes beyond and puts all the effort in, the rest of the team are going to see that, and they're going to follow. That goes with everything, like goes within in the gym. If you're pushing really hard, someone there next to you is going to be more inclined to push hard as well, because they see you pushing hard, and that's going to result in people getting better.
Absolutely. And so let's put a more pragmatic spin on this. So I think people now would have thoroughly understood like what we meant. And so if someone is stuck, like they're in a position where they're either uncomfortable or they're uncertain, and they want to just change things around, and they want to create a whole different narrative. So what benchmarks would you say that let's just use health, and let's just use relationships as two examples. So if someone's in poor health and their relationships have gone to shit, what would you say would be a benchmark that they could follow, and then actions and commitments that they can make to then reach those benchmarks?
Health, I'd say sleep first and foremost, water intake, and get your nutrition from whole foods primarily. So probably 80-20 rule, something like that, like majority 80 whole foods and 20 sort of other sort of foods that you enjoy. And just follow a consistent basis. That's probably the health. And also talking when you feel you need to talk. That's important as well. Is that in your mental health, you need to do that. And your physical health sort of comes as a result of putting in the work. In relationships, that goes with communication. Communication's the main thing for me, is all the time you sort of tell stories to yourself about what other people think, or about how someone would view what you have to say, but until you actually ask the question and until you actually communicate with them that, you don't really know.
Absolutely.
And that's holding yourself back mentally and from you moving forward as well. That's the relationships, to me, is communication, and just being honest with them and having integrity, doing what you say you're going to do, so they can actually trust you, and don't fuck people around. Is a big thing as well. Like, you value their time, value what they have to say.
That's probably another whole podcast episode, that one.
But we keep going for the rest of the day, but we don't have the whole day.
And so I would say in that context, then just having a standard for yourself, meaning that you're going to go train 3 times a week no matter what. So that's a standard that you can simply make. Like if your health is in trouble and you know that you've got 3 hours a week, you can go and dedicate to the gym.
Yeah.
You go to the gym.
Yeah, 100%.
And then by going to the gym, then you're going, hey, look, I'm more confident. Like I'm said that I'm going to go to the gym, and it's been now 6 months, and I've been going to the gym 3 times a week. And then within that 6 months, I've also gone to bed earlier and woken up earlier each and every morning. Every time I go shopping now, I'm more inclined to buy whole foods, and I'm building myself up because I know that my body is a vessel that delivers me good things every single day. And I know that my mind is also sharp and it's also healthy. So I'm able to give it nourishment by eating better. And so those examples can be used to lead oneself, because like you said, people tell themselves stories all the time. So my question is what story are you telling yourself? Are you telling yourself, oh, things aren't really going well, and I know that I cope with that by eating shit, so I'm gonna go and eat shit? Or you go, hey, you know what, things aren't going my way, but I also know that it's my fault because I've done X, Y, Z. I need to do something different, and I need to do it now. How do I start? Cool, good question. All right, so the way you start is by finding somebody who is in a position that you'd like to be in, and begin asking questions and going, hey, what do you do to get yourself here? When you feel like shit or you have a down day, what are you doing to then pick yourself back up? Oh, that's a bit different to what I do, and I'm here and you're there. I guess it's probably better for me to try and start doing that. And so you start doing what they're doing, and things begin to work, and you're going, yeah, okay, cool. Like this interaction had a huge benefit. I wonder how I can give back. And then you ask that question again, hey, your advice, your guidance, your counsels really help. What can I do for you in return? You know what? Nothing. I gave it to you because you knew that you needed help, and you said that you were going to do it, and I trusted you, and now you've done it. Or someone might say, well, hey, you know what? Like, I know that there will be a point in time when you might be able to give something back to me, as long as you pay attention to who I am and figure out, oh, hey, he likes going to the races, or hey, he likes going to the footy. You know what? Yeah, I could probably buy him a box seat to a footy match. Like that would be sincerely appreciated. He doesn't know about it, but I want to give that back because he's given so much to me. And so it's that givers get mentality where you're constantly in that frame of giving in any way possible. That's what that first person did for the person that was struggling. And now that person who was struggling did all the things that he said to do. Now he's doing well, so now he's able to give back. And that's the reciprocity of leading by example, because when you see somebody do well, you're more inclined to do well. When you start interacting with that particular person doing well, and you start following their counsel and their guidance, it's more likely that you're going to do well, because now you've stepped into that frame of, hey, I'm going to do well because X, Y, Z, not, hey, I'm struggling because of X, Y, Z, and you stay in that loop. And so by reframing, you're able to then embody the example that you eventually want to build. And it all starts with going, hey, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, and I need to do something about it. And then it might be setting up that gym routine. It might be setting up that going to bed earlier routine. It might be talking to a friend and going, hey, you know what? I'm doing shit at the moment. Seems like you're doing pretty well. What are you doing that's different to me, so that then I can switch what I'm doing, so I can just get over the shit that I'm doing. And as simple as that is, it can be very challenging sometimes because it's confronting. Because you have to confront yourself and go, yeah, you haven't been up to standard. You haven't been up to the benchmark that you said that you were going to set. And because you're afraid of your own standards, instead of confronting your fear, you're blaming other people for not being where you want to be. That's a problem. That's not leading by example at all. That's leading by fear, and letting fear consume you rather than you confront it. And so just to rewind this whole tangent that I just went on, the best way to set a benchmark is to firstly acknowledge that you need to set a benchmark, or otherwise you're just going to keep doing what you're doing. And then find somebody who's already leading by example in that benchmark, ask them what they're doing and what you need to change. And if that means you have to pay for their knowledge or you have to pay for their services, pay. If not, and then they offer you something where it's valuable, but they're not asking you for money, do take it and actually use it. Like, I know that you're less likely to do things if it's given to you for free because it doesn't really have a money value, but some of them are actual nuggets. And like, people that understand this givers get mentality, who give without expecting anything in return, like, you just know what they give you is going to be an absolute gold mine. And so follow it. And then if you follow it and then you see no changes, then okay, maybe reconsider the advice. But if you take the advice, you don't follow it fully and you don't commit to it, and then 6 months later you complain about their advice when you know that you didn't do the work,
you can't,
then how can you expect them to be the problem?
Yeah,
you're exactly the problem.
Yeah.
And so that would be my process of following through on example. I'm currently going through this myself, like, where I know for the last 5, 6, 7 years I haven't been very responsible with my money. And so knowing that, now I need to go, well, things need to change, things need to be different, here's how. And so when to go get work, I continue to run my business, I continue to ask questions about money and read books on money, but also apply what I read and give myself a better understanding, and then just go all in on it. So if there's no action taken, then nothing happens. And so leading by example is also knowing where your limits are and going, well, you know what, we have to break these limits somehow and do something different. And so it's just that repetitious process of setting the benchmark, doing the thing that you set, and doing it consistently for long enough where you can definitely see a result in 5, 10, 15 years time. Because it's not going to happen overnight either. Like,
no.
You see all these programs that tell you that you're going to lose 15 kilos in 90 days or make 100K per month in your next year. Like, the likelihood of that happening is like 0.1%. Like, that person who is super obsessed with only completing that particular thing and just ravenously intaking information and outputting action, like those are the people that will reach that. But for the rest of us that either have lives or are distracted or have responsibilities that hinder us from putting all of our eggs into one basket, like, we need to figure out a different way. And so by setting the benchmarks that we want and then ruthlessly following those benchmarks, that will then allow us to then eventually put all of our benchmarks together and live the life that we end up wanting.
I think ego comes involved as well with it, leading by example.
That's a whole nother fucking
podcast
that episode too.
I know, but like, when you think about it, like, say a scenario of admitting that you've made a mistake to your boss or to someone.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
Right?
That's very confronting. No?
Yeah, so if you really want to lead by example, you'd go ahead, take that action and admit that you were wrong, and take extreme ownership to that, right? That takes a lot of, like, you've got to put your ego aside for that. Your ego can get involved a lot. You don't want to be proven wrong. You don't want to admit that you're wrong. And that can hinder you from leading example. Just in that example, could be in the gym, everything. Like, you could be doing a workout wrong for so much time, and by having your, like, if someone wants to tell you that you're doing it wrong, rather than like taking that advice on board and then putting your ego aside in that scenario, and allowing them to lead you, that can stop it as well. So ego just freaking is involved in that to an extreme. Like,
yeah, and I think as well, like, there are healthy doses of ego, like, because ego is one of those things where it gives you a sense of self-confidence that you're able to do something, or you have the capacity to do something. And so I think ego is, I think it's described as a way to it's a way to describe people who might overplay their hand or overplay their capacity to be able to do something. And so being able to demonstrate that you're able to actually complete something that you set yourself to, whilst other people might deem it crazy or impossible, that's not ego at all. That's confidence, and that's an important attribute. And so it's delineating between confidence and ego. So confidence is a person who understands what's required of them, understands the responsibilities necessary to complete something, and also understands that there's a degree of risk of failure that might occur, and they're okay with that, and then they go and take action anyway. Where ego is that person who doesn't calculate the risk of failure, only sees the positives, and also at the same time, anyone that decides against what they think or what they say, then they're either completely oblivious to it, or they defend to the death of the particular thing that they're defending, even though they know they're wrong in the first place. And so ego has its place. It's just knowing what it looks like and where it derives from. Where confidence comes from a place of love, like we discussed in another podcast, and ego comes from a place of fear. And so knowing that fear is healthy, but overdoing it and overplaying your hand because you're scared of something to happen, that's ego. Where you know, by setting a standard and doing the 1% things every single day to get better, you do get better, you get more confident, and you develop your capacity to be better. That's confidence. And then that's where you grow, and it comes from a place of love, because you know that you love yourself enough to go, hey, things need to be different. I need to grow, I want my life to change, and you make the changes. And so ego has its place, like you said. It's a factor. And so when you know that the ego is talking, then you might want to step back and go, hang on, like, what do I actually know? What is my capacity? Where if it's confidence talking and you're going, well, I've already visualized that it's already going to be done, and here's how I'm going to do it because I have skill 1, skill 2, skill 3, and you go and do it, it's done. And so knowing which is also an example of leading by example, because the person that does lead by example, they lead with confidence, not with ego. Where a person that doesn't lead by example and they lead by trying to manage other people and tell them what to do all the time, that's leading by ego, and it doesn't work. I know that because I've been both people. Like when I was at Dan Murphy's, like I led by ego. Like I knew that I had to work and I had to make my work ethic match my ego, but at the same time I was also pretty mean to some people, and I'm truly apologetic, and I am really sorry about everything that happened during that time. And I know now as a coach that won't work, like with people. I know clients will resent me. I know that clients won't be inclined to follow through with continuing to train or following the program or following the process, because all I've done is just guesstimate what they should be doing or who they are, and just give them generic programs or give them cookie cutter nutrition plans or things that I know that come from the ego. I was like, oh yeah, I can do that, that's easy, I'll go and do that, and not really get to know the person. Where it takes humility to go, hey, I actually don't know, but at the same time I know that I can help you because I'm willing to invest in you, and I'm willing to go, hey, look, this is what I would like to do with you, here's how I know that we can lose the weight, and we're going to do that. And if then something doesn't work, we'll make adjustments along the way, because I know that I'm human and I can be wrong sometimes. So I'd like to invest in you, and I hope you'd like to invest in me as well. And we build that symbiotic relationship. And that applies everywhere. And that applies everywhere.
Yeah, it applies in every aspect of life.
Man, that was a big conversation, eh?
Yeah.
Do you have anything else to add?
No, well, just one quote from Vince Lombardi. Leading by example is not the best way to lead, it's the only way to lead.
It's the only way to lead. Whether it's your own life, whether you manage a team, whether you're in a relationship, like both have their own qualities in a relationship, and you can both set an example of what a good life could look like. And so by just knowing that you can make a difference by taking action today and setting a standard for yourself, or whatever that standard may look like, man, shit will change. Like if you're in this place where you're going, man, I wish shit should change. I wish shit could change. Like, I mean, instead of saying I wish, just say I will, and go and do the things.
Yeah, 100%.
And that wraps up today's episode. Please like and subscribe and share our shit, because we think it's good shit, and this is not just ego talking either. This is us going, hey, this is what we're learning, and here's how we can help you. So if you like it, share it, subscribe, and see you next time.
Yeah, have a good one, guys.